Shed more light on the President's position on the declaration of state of emergency in some states. I'm now being joined on the news by the Special Advisor to the President on Media and Publicity, Dr. Ruben Abati. Well, thank you for joining us today. Now, some lawyers say Section 305 of the 1999 Constitution was silent on the details of what the President can do. What is the rationale behind leaving the governors in office?
Well, what people must note is that what the President has done is lawful and constitutional. There is no part of the Constitution that gives the President of Nigeria the powers to remove a state governor or political office holders, particularly under the circumstances of the declaration of emergency. And the relevant sections of the Constitution to consider will include sections 1 and 2 of the Constitution, Section 11, subsection 4, where it is expressly stated that not even the National Assembly can remove a state governor. If you look also at Section 217, what it says is that when, under these circumstances, the armed forces are deployed to put down an insurrection or to check the breakdown of law and order, those armed forces, security forces, are expected to act in aid of the civilian authorities. And then the other relevant sections will be sections 180, section 188, and section 189, dealing with the tenure of office of a governor and then circumstances under which a governor can be removed. It's also important to note that under section 305, subsection 4 thereof, indeed, a state governor can also make representation to a state house of assembly asking for the proclamation of a state of emergency. And where a state governor fails to do so, then, the president can intervene and act as President Jonathan has acted. So it's a constitution, that has guided the president, and to the extent that the constitution is the ground norm, and we're, committed to the rule of law, anything to the contrary will have been unlawful and will have been unconstitutional.
All right, we also have some analysts who think that, well, the issue that necessitated the declaration of emergency was also noticed in some other states up north, and they wonder, why were some states who have witnessed this skirmish left out?
Sorry, I didn't quite get that. It's not so clear.
Some states that have also witnessed some of this security challenge have been left out. We have people wondering, why were those other states left out?
Well, you notice that the president made it clear that after his return from South Africa, there were consultations, there were security briefings. It is true that, in the opening paragraph of the address by the president, he identified many other states that have been affected. But in this particular case, Borno, Yobe, and Adamawa, those are the areas where we have the most serious threat to the sovereignty of the Nigerian state. The issue is about the assault on Nigeria's territorial integrity. What we're facing in these places where state of emergency has been declared is not just a question of people fighting an ideological war. They are trying to create an enclave out of Nigeria. There has been an attempt to create a state out of the Nigerian state. And, in some of these places, the terrorists have even hoisted their own flags. Now, what, President Jonathan made clear is that nobody, under any circumstances whatsoever, will be allowed, to divide Nigeria. And that is very clear under Section 2 of the Constitution, the indissolubility and the indivisibility of Nigeria. In some of the other states, the level of threat has not yet reached that stage. What the president did yesterday is to send out a very strong signal that whoever attempts to violate the integrity of the Nigerian state, will be met, with, considerable action. So it's this president saying enough is enough. Government will not tolerate any attempt, to violate the sovereignty of Nigeria. That was very clear in his address.
All right, then tell us then, what is the current situation with getting the National Assembly to approve this?
Well, Section 305 of the Constitution, again, is very clear about this. Where the National Assembly is sitting, is in session, it is required within 2 days to endorse through a resolution, 2/3 majority of each of the houses in the National Assembly. If it is not in session, then within 10 days. But the situation we have now is that, the National Assembly is in session, and, the Gazette, I believe, already has been forwarded or will be forwarded today to the National Assembly, and then the National Assembly will act, accordingly. Already, of course, you note that the National Assembly, particularly the Senate, has already spoken in support of the action that has been taken. And also other members of the National Assembly of both houses have, praised the executive arm of government, the president, for acting as he has done. There is a meeting of minds between the executive and the legislature in this matter as to the need to ensure, to protect the territorial integrity of Nigeria and to ensure that there is no breakdown of law and order, in any part of the country, and that no anarchist, or terrorist or insurgent is allowed to overwhelm the state authority.
4 minutes to 8. Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. We're continuing our focus on the suspension of the CBN Governor, Sanusi Lamido. We're joined now, as you might have seen in that welcoming slide, by Tilawa Oyefeso, who is a financial lawyer. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you, Chamberlain.
Well, already you have those who are saying that this is, they talk about the legality of this suspension. So some think it's illegal, it's usurping his position. But tell us, give us a perspective legally. Where does the president derive the powers to suspend him?
Thank you very much, Chamberlain. Well, we'll be careful the way we approach this issue, because from the statement we read yesterday, it was referred to as a suspension. Yeah. And legally speaking, we would find that there's a difference between a suspension and a removal, as it were, because by virtue of the provisions of the law, when you talk about a suspension, you're actually dealing with, an abeyance of certain rights that an individual possesses. It doesn't necessarily deal with a diminution of rank or demotion. So essentially, that he was suspended doesn't mean he was removed. But my grouse here is with the provisions of the CBN Act, particularly Section 8. It deals with the appointment of the CBN governor. And if you go through the provisions of sections 9, 10, and 11, it deals also with the removal. So the appointment of a CBN governor is actually done by the president, subject to confirmation by the Senate. The removal of the CBN governor can be done by the president, but subject to a support of 2/3 majority of the Senate. So when the president suspends the CBN governor, the question now arises, does he have the power to do that? To my own mind, he could have the power to suspend the CBN governor, because the suspension is different, from a removal. But we have to focus on the interpretation of the court, because as it stands, Mr. Sanusi has decided to proceed to court, to seek redress. So the court now will give us an opportunity, to let us know whether or not the removal or the suspension, as it were, was validly done in the law.
Because some also say that, well, in that law, it only makes provision for removal and not suspension. So maybe you say, as you say, he should go if he goes to court, the court will now determine all of those. But do we call this a suspension? Because if you look at, yes, he was announced to have been suspended. Then you have Dr. Sarah Lade, who was announced to act in his capacity while he's away. And then you have a name or names forwarded to the Senate for confirmation as substantive governor. Some just say that this is just removal.
That's a very perfect point to note, because as it stands, to my own mind, it also seems to be a removal. So that's why I fear that Mr. Sanusi, might win in the court of law, because the provisions of the CBN Act is very clear as to the procedure for a removal, which was not followed by the president, in doing what, the president did. Because I would like to also want you to avert your mind to a provision of the law, particularly on suspension. There's an authority, I call it Lewis and Heifer and Sons by Lord Denning, where he actually spelled out, the rights of, the government in performing administrative functions.
Will this also pop up in court, and how might the court view it if they look at the corresponding actions of the government? if the government say, listen, according to our letter, the notes we communicated to him is that he is suspended. And of course, you have to have someone who will act in his capacity while he's suspended. But what if the court then says, or someone presents to the court, maybe in his prayers, the suspended CBN governor says, well, going by the corresponding actions of government, the intention of that is removal. And so, if he argues that way, he will have a point, will he?
Yes, he will. But, you know, definitely we cannot conjecture at this point, because the questions will definitely come before the court. And when that happens, the court will have the opportunity to decide, because it all depends on the prayers that you have before the court. You know, the court will not give a party what it doesn't ask for.
Part of comments coming through from the the FRCN's recommendations, they say that they considered the CBN governor's response to some of those queries and some of their findings. And they also say that there was a clear display of incompetence, nonchalance, fraud, wastefulness, and abuse of due process, and deliberate efforts to misrepresent facts on the part of the leadership of the CBN. The council then advised the president to exercise powers conferred on him by Section 11(2), subsection F of the CBN Act 2007, or invoke Section 11(2)(c) of the said Act, and cause the governor and the deputy governors to cease from holding office in the CBN. Now, if you go to these sections which they talked about here, it tells us about procedure on how he is to be removed, where it talks about the 2/3 majority from the Senate, and the CBN governor can cease to hold office if he is found guilty of misconduct. But that was a recommendation of the FRCN. But do you think those procedures from this recommendation were followed?
Well, I would like to throw light on that. If you observe the provisions of Section 36 of Section 5 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, it says a person is presumed innocent until the contrary is proved. So we cannot sit here and be saying that the governor is guilty of those allegations. And if you check the provisions of Section 11 you just quoted, it actually talks about disqualification from office, and it uses that expression if there has been guilt established. So in this case, no guilt has been established.
Not even by the FRCN?
Not even by the FRCN. The guilt hasn't been established. It's just a mere allegation.
Okay.
It's just a mere allegation. And once the allegation, has been read out, the next thing that the FRC ought to do is to conduct an inquiry. After an inquiry has been conducted, if there's a prima facie case established, then it will be called to answer to the allegations, and it may have a valid case of presentation. So in this case, no guilt has been established. So the issue of cessation or disqualification of office or suspension does not arise.
If we go to Marquez' comment, wherein, look, the names that were submitted was because, look, he's not seeking the second term. He said he always knew he was going to have just one term. So if we assume that those names are for confirmation for this filling of that position for the next term, and then you come and look at the statement from Dr. Abati, where I think is the fourth and the fifth paragraph. In that fourth paragraph, I think the second line, where he now said that the president has asked Dr. Sarah Ladi, who will serve as acting governor until the conclusion of ongoing investigations into breaches of enabling laws, due process, and mandate of the CBN. So, do we then assume that he's asked to go on this suspension so that they can conclude investigations? Because what do some people argue that, look, this is just outright removal, going by those corresponding events?
You see, like we say, we could continue to argue on and on this, but we have to leave it for the courts to decide if truly he's seeking, redress, in the court. That's the position I want to take on that.
Does it also tie the hands of the Senate? Would you see a situation where they will be able to consider the names of the nominees or dissent to them when there is still, in quote, is it a suspended CBN governor whose powers are not clear, or or an acting CBN governor and a suspended CBN governor? Do you think that they can actually go ahead and consider that?
Okay, as it stands today, Mr. Sanusi has only indicated that he's seeking legal redress in court. So nothing stops the National Assembly from performing their statutory, duty to consider, you know, that if it now happens, he goes to court and the matter is in court, then the National Assembly can now take the initiative to wait for the procedure or the action in court, pending in court, in order for it to decide what next it will do.
But some people will argue that that doesn't affect, I mean, if it goes to court, it doesn't affect what they ordinarily would have done. Do you think it's too early in the day to consider, because he was going to go in June or July anyway? Yeah. Is it too early to start consideration for a new CBN governor?
Ordinarily, it's not too early because of the time frame, but I am looking at the legal implication. If he decides to challenge it, of course, we have to respect, you know, the jurisdiction of the courts. If he goes to court, the prayers that he would take to court are what will matter, because he could ask for certain prayers, like maybe an injunction, you know, an administrative, you know, order.
22 minutes past 8. Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. Continuing our focus on the suspension of the CBN Governor Sanusi Lamido. We're joined now on the phone by Femi Awoyemi, who is the CEO of ProShare Nigeria. Morning, and thank you for joining us, Femi. And looking at this suspension, so many issues arise. Let's get your perspective first and foremost. What do you think, or what did you think when you heard about the suspension?
Well, like most Nigerians, I felt that at some point in time, the confrontation in respect of the discussions around the revenue of the economy, the role of the CBN and NNPC was going to come to a head. I recall being on your program the other time and we spoke about it. My initial reactions were, however, as follows. One, if it is a case of a timing, this was a poorly timed decision. Secondly, the rationale for it, with the allegations from the Federal Reporting Council, like I use the word reporting council, does play rather very, very lousy in respect to the seriousness to which the implications for Nigeria in terms of the autonomy of the CBN governor, in terms of it being perceived as a response to recent comments on the leakages in the oil sector, and that the focus on the person as against the institution is also rather very, very damaging. Personally, I felt this was a decision that I can process really fully well.
Yeah, but if you go on and further consider the comments from Dr. Abati, that of the Financial Reporting Council of Nigeria, and some who also say, look, what do we then do? Do we, because for fear of wrong timing, just allow these kind of things to go on? Because even the CBN governor said he was surprised that it took so long.
Well, you see, my tendency is to move away from the drama. There's so much drama going on, whether he said this, whether the person, whether the individual did that or not. Look, my own position has always been this, that truth must be said. That Lamido Sanusi, at the risk of contradiction, tends towards being a propagandist in terms of his reputation as a solutions provider, who chooses to want to make a stand, a definite stand in terms of how the role of the central bank in reordering the economy is ordered. If that is outside the mandate, there is also what you call the responsibility in the office. The CBN governor's role is far beyond what the individual Lamido Sanusi is. So we must separate the two. If the CBN governor was going to step down in March, but the government needed to, quote and unquote, teach him a lesson, I think this is a very expensive lesson.
Why did he come out? I mean, is it really teaching a lesson? Because from the comments coming from them, they are basing this suspension on recommendations from a council and not just unilateral action, and queries coming from the president, the secretary, to the government of the federation. They all are attached to all of this, talking about what they think is wrong. And in fact, the comment was an ongoing investigation. So how does that sit for you? How do you perceive it?
Look, I was privileged to listen to the legal mind that you brought on, and I think he said it all. If you take a look at it, I'm sure that the CBN governor is perfectly within his right to either walk into the sunset or to have the institution and the whole country by let us testing how this will go. And I think it will be a welcome development to see how that will go, because we also have those in government who make some decisions tomorrow to understand that whatever you say concerning the Financial Reporting Council, a very well-intentioned institution, by the way, and who has been doing a lot of good. But then vis-a-vis the provisions of the Central Bank Act. Now, if the Central Bank governor is found to have done something wrong or has been discovered to do something wrong, what does the government do? Again, these are part of our learning opportunities that we know that if, in spite of that, there are so many examples around the government, and the government has always found a way to understand that it cannot move against certain things or certain persons. My take on this is simply that it is not only shocking, it defies deep reasoning, the logic of it. Now, if you find him very guilty, then say so that he's guilty. If he's not guilty or you are investigating, then find other ways to do so. I do not know. I cannot recall anywhere in between Section 5 and Section 11 that gives a provision for suspension. I'm sure they would have acted on that legal advice, and the legal advice would have created some basis for their action, hopefully. But I cannot find, and I'm sure that it's interesting for everybody. Now, the international community's reaction, well, we can place that within another different context why they will react. But the whole Naira has fallen far lower than it has in 15 years in one single day. That should tell you that this action has huge consequences. Hopefully, the thinking by those who took this action is that this will go away in about a week or two. But I can assure you, it's in the record books right now. And this action would have to be tested as part of our strengthening our own financial services sector, and as an institution of the CBN, which remains about their own independent one. Now, this is not to say that those who are challenging this decision condone a situation whereby a central bank governor would act with impunity. No, that is not the case. It is also the case that we should be looking at how to deal with such situations, and this whole process may help us in developing that.
What do you think the government should have done? Should they have waited maybe till his tenure, and then what? How should they have approached this to prevent how the market is responding?
And actually present it and follow the due process. They can present the case to the Senate on the basis of the following allegations, which have been substantiated by apparatus of government, that this gentleman needs therefore to be removed. And then the Senate will have the problem of saying that they would refuse to act on the basis of clear evidence. We cannot, in trying to sort the problem out, go outside the norms. That would be a more commonsensical approach. But you know, these things are not about common sense. Sometimes they're about emotions. But we cannot afford to allow emotions to redirect every action of government.
What will be the way forward for you?
We are hopeful that the central bank governor would make a position in terms of helping the whole process through. We see that if he decides to therefore go to court, it will be in furtherance of helping the process of institution building. It will also help both the government and the market itself to understand that Nigeria is still a nation ruled by laws. It would also mean that going forward, the discussions will focus less on the individual and rather on the issues. If there are concerns in terms of the individual, but of course, there are concerns in terms of the individual. But then we should move beyond whether you like the person or you do not. Look, let's take it this way. If in the middle of a position of a whistleblower, and you take an action like this, you risk being seen as trying to prevent the discussion. Don't forget that it's not only just the CBN, the key principal actors around the petroleum issues are paying consequences. Now, which means that the government, in some way, is passing an unintended message out there. That is of more concern for me. Look, Lamido Sanusi's tenure is ended, technically. Whether now or not he would have handed over or sent in his notice of that we'll be leaving is not going to be renewed. It shouldn't be the issue. We have more serious issues on our hands as a country, that and in terms of the economy. The decisions by central bank has not been should I say, very accepted by everyone. Some of the actions are not really like everything, but that's how it works. That's how it works. This particular decision for me is that it's more of a reaction. You do not say because you suspect someone, you suspend them. We've seen the examples from this government in terms of where people have allegations and they haven't been suspended. And so we would like to just see that as a country, it is important we all put together now and try to protect the sovereign interest in Nigeria. And at some point we would all come together and see that. But individually, as part of the nation building and institution building.
It was a day of emotion. All right, Femi Awoyemi is the CEO of ProShare Nigeria. Thank you very much indeed for speaking with us today on Sunrise Daily. We'll now be going over to our Abuja studios where Honorable Zachary Mohammed, who is the spokesman for the House of Representatives, joins us. Morning, Honorable, and thank you for joining us today on the program. Well, we're speaking about the suspension of the central bank governor. What do you think of this? You think that it was in line with the Central CBN Act?
Yeah, thank you very much, Chamberlain. I actually listened to Chief Ozekome with rapt attention. But you exactly know what happened in the floor of the House before our 2 weeks break to consider the 2014 budget. But the thinking of the House, if you look at the torrents of our debate that day, was the fact that we have nothing wrong with Mr. President exercising his powers under the CBN Act to remove the CBN governor. But of course, people read that CBN Act just by a half and stop. And that is worrisome, because Section 11(2)(f states categorically that the CBN governor can be removed provided it's supported by two-thirds majority of the Senate. And in this case, we don't know whether a communication has been sent to the Senate requesting the removal of Mr. President of the CBN governor. So that is what we're worried about. We want, in the House of Representatives, we want institutions to be built, strong institutions, and not individuals. So we're not bothered by all the misconduct put together. That is not what we're worried about. We're worried about the process of removal, because if we as the Parliament brought out an act in 2007, even if we are not members, it's continuum, and the act has been abused, we should stand by it and insist that the right thing be done. That's exactly the thinking, and of course the position of the House of Representatives. Yeah, but Honorable, isn't the reason that brought about the suspension also important here as much as the process? The crafters of the act were very, very clever and never put suspension because it could be prone to abuses. If you look at the length and breadth of that act, there's no place where you will see suspension being stated. The only way, the only clear case of its removal, it stated clearly that you could remove the CBN governor supported by the two-thirds majority of the Senate. And I listened to Chief Ozekome, who was talking about, I think the law did not say rectification. You don't remove before you go to the Senate to take, you take their consent. You take it to them, they vote on it, then at the end of the day, a position is taken. If the ayes have it, Mr. President will have his way to remove the CBN governor. But of course, it is all if the words were rectification, you can take an action, then later you take to the Senate for rectification. The crafters of the act didn't put rectification. In 2012, the House of Reps was holding this public hearing. They wanted to amend the CBN Act because they wanted the CBN to submit their budget to the National Assembly for approval. And that's part of what the reasons are for this removal. You say you haven't seen the report and that you would rather let the CBN stay there. So it does appear as though both the executive arm of government
and the National Assembly do, from some quarters, suspect that, look, something is wrong with the CBN Act. You had the same issues with him, but in this case, an action has been taken. So are we not talking about the same thing here, that something needs to be done about this? That it appears as though he's got too much powers.
Through our Committee on Banking and Currency in the House of Representatives, sometime last year, we had made suggestions that because the Act itself, laws are meant for institutions and they have to at least be updated from time to time. And at that time, we were looking at the budget, the Act, and we were looking at certain aspects of the CBN governor's powers, which were powers to donate and all that. Those were the areas we were looking at. And I was saying that as a CBN, he should concentrate on monetary policies and not go into those aspects. And that, I remember that was what brought about the amendment of the CBN Act, that we had a public hearing. But unfortunately, all the ex-CBN governors, the financial sector, everybody that mattered in the financial sector came and kicked against our proposal for the amendments to be done. So, as a house of the people, and of course, as people who take along the majority views of Nigerians, we couldn't proceed with that.
Is there anywhere in the CBN Act, either in section 11, which you cited, is there anywhere that it says the CBN governor cannot be suspended?
There's no place where the word suspended is still clearly stated. Nowhere where they said CBN governor could be suspended. There's no, I've read it length and breadth of the Act. There's nowhere where the word suspension comes up.
Not even 2 minutes to 8. Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. Mr. John Oloyede joins us now. He is a legal practitioner. Thank you for coming on this morning. Well, yes, looking at some of the issues raised in the presidential media chat, which was held over the weekend, and then we then have this unfortunate incident on our hands, security, and then it also has, well, people just keep asking. Just now we were talking about to Mr. Fashakin about, look, the state of emergency, security. Do you think there'll be a problem or a legal challenge if, for instance, the governors in those states had maybe temporarily stepped aside for the sake of restoring peace, in case somebody is still considering that option? Is it a place that we should go to, and what challenge will we face, legally speaking?
Well, I don't think one would expect any governor in any part of Nigeria to step aside. I mean, the president has to, invoke his special powers. If need be, if the president is of the opinion that, well, matters have degenerated to the point where, drastic steps have to be taken, then he should go ahead and do it, like the former president did with regards to Ekiti State and some other places. But expecting any governor or a politician in Nigeria or anybody in the corridors of power to step aside will probably be expecting too much. So it's not so much of a legal problem. There's no legal problem there. Once the president invokes his powers and he goes to the Senate, the houses, and they ratify whatever he has done, there can be no legal issues. There are constitutional provisions. So I don't have any problems with that.
We've also heard that the borders, that's the northern parts with Cameroon, has been closed with respect to this one, to see so that people don't just come in from there, attack in the country and run back. And then there was that comment too that was made by the presidency saying that hampers us because we cannot just go and attack locations in another country because of certain laws. So how do you see that actually?
Well, that is in the realm of international law. Every state is sovereign. We can't just dash into Cameroon or Niger in the name of chasing Boko Haram. And that takes me to my view about the way and manner politicians have turned this Boko Haram issue into campaign rhetorics. Given the present circumstances, you have to put it in proper perspective. He said that, and then followed on by saying, because they are ill-equipped, they are not as well armed as the Boko Haram elements, and they are not as well motivated as Boko Haram elements. So that is the circumstance. In the circumstances in which they exist, which is that they don't have enough arms to combat these people, they are not well motivated to face these people, well, they are trying.
In other words,
it is not that, it's not, if he said, oh, given that so far they've been able to rout them, they were able to discover serious armed catchments in Kano underground, they were able to push them out of Abuja, these people were almost entering the Aso Rock, and that they've been able to push them. That was not the circumstance. He was talking in terms of their status, in terms of being armed and motivation. Maybe they are not well paid, maybe that's what he meant. And maybe these people are getting more money. From where? From who?
Okay. There's a comment here from Mitari. He says, security in Nigeria is not the sole responsibility of the president. It's a collective responsibility of every Nigerian. Now, even if we see one or two things going on somewhere, usually, in some cases, they encourage us all to blow the whistle in some of these matters. If it happens, we have to either report to the police, or to the military, or to any of the security agencies. But can they then take it from there? Is the whistleblower protected in this part of the world?
It is not about a whistleblower. I would disagree to an extent with the person who sent in the comment. Yes, I mean, ordinarily is not the exclusive preserve of the president, but the president is the commander-in-chief. He controls all the armed forces. The police is a federal body. There is no control by any state governor. The governor, they say the governor is chief security officer of the state, something akin to that of the president, commander-in-chief. So this person is the commander-in-state. But the man who is the chief security officer has to go cap in hand, even when there is ordinary flooding in some states. They have to go to they will say, oh, NEMA, please, we need NEMA. And federal government will have to provide. So when it comes to security, why must it be that every time there's a breach in any part of the country, even a local government, even an hamlet, they have to rush down to the federal level? That takes us to the issue at hand, which is the conference.
Yeah.
You see, I don't know why people speak through both sides of their mouths. When it suits them, some people will say, we don't want national conference. We don't want any conference at all. It's a waste of time. At another time, they will tell you, we need state police. What better opportunity do people have to go and ventilate their positions? That, look, we can't continue running to you, Mr. President, every time there is a problem in our state. Give us state police, and let the law be so tight that no state governor can use it one day to face the Nigerian army and say we are seceding.
Mobile platform including iPhone, iPad, BlackBerry, and Androids. You can also participate from wherever you are in the world. We'll be happy to receive and read out your questions to the candidates. So, email or follow us on govdebate@channelstv.com, Governorship Debate on Facebook, and on Twitter, gov_debate. The elections are just about 4 weeks away. And indeed, INEC and politicians should be putting finishing touches to preparations and campaigns as the case may be. Tonight's debate will be among 5 candidates. Jaye Rundle of the Social Democratic Mega Party. Would you please come forward? Mr. Babatunde Fashola of the Action Congress of Nigeria. Dr. Adedosumu of the People's Democratic Party. And Dr. Adegola Dominic of the All Progressive Grand Alliance. Then Chief Yomi Tokoya of the All Nigeria People's Party. The debate will last 2 hours, following detailed rules of engagement worked out by Channel's debate committee and accepted by representatives of all the candidates. I have agreed to enforce the rules as agreed upon. The questions tonight will be divided into 4 segments to be asked by 2 respected Nigerian journalists. Ladies first, Ijoma Wahugo, the editor of Sunday newspaper, I beg your pardon, Sunday editor of This Day newspapers, you, gentlemen. And Mr. Frank Aigwegun, the publisher of Business Day newspaper. And our timekeeper is Innie Thompson of Channels Television. Now here are the rules. For each question, there can only be a 2-minute response, a 1-minute rebuttal, and at my discretion, a discussion extension of 1 minute. There will be 2-minute opening statements and 2-minute closing statements by each candidate. There's an audience here in the hall made up of the creme de la creme of the Nigerian society, but they will remain silent throughout, except at the beginning and at the end of the segments when they can applaud the candidates. Would you then please join me in giving all our candidates a resounding welcome. Well, the pilot was drawn, and we're going to have to start with Chief Yomi Tokoya with his opening statements.
Thank you very much, distinguished Lagosians. My name is Abdullahi Yomi Tokoya. I am a servant of Almighty God. I'm a journalist by training. I'm a human rights activist, a revolutionary politician, a patriot, a nationalist, an industrialist, a philanthropist, and most importantly, I'm a fighter for a better country. I am a change agent. Nigeria today is a very sick country. And I'm of the opinion, divine and patriotic opinion, that we need a revolution in Nigeria. And we want to start that revolution from Lagos State. As a lot of you are aware, a revolution has universal definition. It involves fundamental and qualitative changes in the social, economic, and political structure.
Dear Lagosians, good evening. I am Babatunde Raji Fashola. I am your incumbent governor, and I'm also the flag bearer of the Action Congress of Nigeria for the gubernatorial election in 2011. I'd like to thank Channels Television, I'd like to thank This Day newspaper for convoking this meeting to discuss the future of our state once again. 4 years ago, at this kind of meeting, I offered very transparent, progressive governance to Lagosians. You gave us your vote. And from that day on, Lagos has witnessed a very radical transformation. Lagos has become the center of good governance and reference for development in this country and beyond Nigeria. From that period, the transformation has been evident in a safer security, in a safer state. A night economy has emerged. We have seen improvements in education. We have seen the commencement of the first light rail project undertaken in West Africa. We have seen radical development of infrastructure, improved water supply, improved governance, safety, security, job creation for young men and women. I believe that this is the time to renew that contract, the time to trust experience. This is not the time to experiment with your future. We have offered you a government who has kept promises. We are promise keepers, we are problem solvers. Problems will not go away unless people solve them. I am a problem solver. My party has the manifesto to solve your problems. I believe that if we renew this contract, we can consolidate on the gains that are unmistakable, that are undeniable, that are undebatable. Lagos has transformed in 4 years, and it can leap in greater bounds in the next 4 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, Dr. Dosumu.
Well, good evening, Lagosians. I'm Dr. Shamsidin Adedosu, the flag bearer of the People's Democratic Party. I am a public administrator by training. I have spent the last 24 years of my life in public service. I started from level 8 to level 17, and I have run one of the biggest agencies of government at the federal level. I have decided to offer myself to do what I know how to do best, which is running government, which I have done in the last 24 years of my life. Coupled with the fact that I have a doctorate in public administration and I am an expert of public policy. We have seen government and people like us have decided to come out and run government the way government should be run. We believe that government is about the people, and that is the reason why great philosophers have come up with issues of people-centered government. We know of Rousseau when he talked about government being a contract between the governed and the poor people and the government.
Silence, please.
You can have all the money in the world, but as long as you don't have that basic sense of honesty,
thank you, Mr. Randall.
it's all an exercise in futility.
Well, may I remind our viewers at home that you can also participate in this via wherever you're watching from. You can send your questions to us via the email. It's govdebate@channelstv.com. Or you can follow us or send your questions also on Facebook. That's Governorship Debate on Facebook. You can also do the same on Twitter at gov_debate. We'll be back in just a moment. Don't go away.